Before this video gets underway, I want to say that if you're in America, you may not want to buy any Huawei phones. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment. If you buy one in America, you won't have any warranty from the manufacturer. If you're spending $1,000 on a phone, that may be a problem. Having said that, I just want to compare the hardware of these two phones and see which one is the best. The Mate 20 Pro has a bigger screen, 6.4 inches versus the 5.8 inch of the iPhone XS. The iPhone XS is a small phone. You've got the same aspect ratio in both of these. They're both AMOLED panels. The Mate 20 Pro is a 2K screen, but you should be aware they often ratchet down the resolution to save battery life, so you're not getting the full pixel readout 100% of the time. The iPhone XS screen has a really nice color gamut as well, better than the Mate 20 Pro. Both of these are AMOLED screens. I'm gonna say they're both absolutely amazing. Now the Mate 20 Pro, the PPI is a bit higher than the iPhones, although to be honest, in the real world, it doesn't really make much difference. The Mate 20 Pro has the curved design on the edges. You may like it or you may not. It may sway you one way or another. The design on both of these is really similar. They both have that big notch at the top for the Face ID component. The Mate 20 Pro screen is a little bit bigger, but in real world usage, not really going to see much difference between them. I really like that edge design. I'm a fan of that, but it does make the phone heavier, and it just gives a weird sort of feeling to the front of the phone that the iPhone doesn't have because it's a flat screen. Colors are great on both, deep blacks, really vibrant colors. To be honest, the screens on these two, it has to be a draw. Great design on both of these, to be honest. The iPhone XS, just that premium phone. Mate 20 Pro is every bit as premium. It feels heavier, maybe because of the bigger battery, and that curved screen on the front, it's quite thick and it adds weight to the phone. Because the Mate 20 Pro has the curved screen, it has a bigger screen than the iPhone X, but the phone itself feels really long in comparison. Because those edges are curved around, you get a really long phone design. It feels really nice in the hand, to be honest. Even though the screen is much bigger than the iPhone X, it just doesn't feel like a bigger phone. It feels really compact, really great. In terms of the back design, the iPhone X is really premium, you get that glass, and the Mate 20 Pro, it sort of feels plastic. The Mate 20 Pro is a lot heavier, just feels heavier because of that screen. But I really like the Mate 20 Pro's design. Buttons are nice, and you get a really cool little red power button on the side. It's little touches like that that make a phone unique. Double camera setup on the iPhone XS, triple camera setup on the Mate 20 Pro. 40 megapixel main camera, 20 megapixel ultra wide, 8 megapixel telephoto with 5 times optical zoom on the Mate 20 Pro. You get optical image stabilization on that telephoto. The other two don't have it. On the iPhone XS, you get two 12 megapixel cameras, a wide and a telephoto. You get 2 times optical zoom on that telephoto, and both of those have optical image stabilization. 4K video and slow-mo options on both of these. Selfie cameras, the Huawei Mate 20 Pro gives you a 24 megapixel camera on the front. 24 megapixels in a sensor that small. The iPhone gives you a 7 megapixel shooter on the front. Forgetting the specs of these two cameras, the only real difference that I can see is the wide angle that you get in the Mate 20 Pro. The iPhone has fewer megapixels, but it's going to be better in low light. It also has optical image stabilization on both of the lenses, which is a big plus when you're taking photos and video if the light isn't great. That's a really, really big advantage over the Huawei, because that only has optical image stabilization on the telephoto lens. Image stabilization also helps with photos in low light, so even though you may get a sharper image with the Huawei, you might get more usable images with the iPhone. One thing that the iPhone XS doesn't have is that wide angle lens. That wide angle lens is a really great feature that the Huawei has over the iPhone. They both have a telephoto lens, but in truth, I almost never use the telephoto. It's just not very useful. There aren't many occasions where I want to zoom in that close to an object, and there aren't many occasions that I use portrait mode either, because it's just not very good. When you see the wide angle camera on the Huawei, it looks so great, and it's such a useful thing to have. If you shoot landscapes, if you shoot outside, or even if you shoot inside and you just want to get more people in the frame, it's such a useful feature. So much so that Apple are definitely going to put that on their new phones at the end of 2019. As for now, it doesn't have it. The images you get from both of these are going to be absolutely fantastic. Maybe the iPhone has the edge in video just because of the A12 processor, but you're just going to get great images from both of these phones. Front cameras, you've got a 24 megapixel on the Huawei, 7 megapixel on the iPhone. Neither of these are going to blow you away, to be honest. The Huawei over sharpens images quite a lot. It does a lot digitally to the image to make it look better. Now, if you like that or not, that's down to personal preference. I think the Huawei just over sharpens images a little bit. It looks a little bit fake, not really real to life, whereas the iPhone, you're going to get a much more natural image out of that sensor. A lot of people in China and Asia like the over-sharpened image. They like the beauty modes on there, which you get less of in the iPhone. Maybe that's just personal preference. They're both decent cameras, not going to blow you away. There's no optical image stabilization on either of them. 960 frames a second sounds really good on the spec sheet, but the quality of the image suffers a lot down at that level. If you actually want to shoot usable images and use them on YouTube or something like that, 960 frames at 420p or whatever it is, it's just not going to look very good. The iPhone has 240 FPS and it keeps that HD resolution. I just think those images are going to be way more usable in real life. It's not about specs, it's about getting usable images out of the phone, and I think the iPhone wins in that regard. Very hard to compare the two because they're not running the same operating system. If you look at benchmarks, that Kirin 980 holds up really well. It's one of the best performing chips in the market. You can whack in an SD card into the second SIM slot in the Mate 20 Pro. You got options there that the iPhone just doesn't give you. 6 or 8 gigs of RAM on the Mate 20 Pro. You're stuck with 4 on the iPhone, but we know it handles that RAM really well. The A12 chip from Apple is just simply a better chip than any other smartphone chip. It absolutely smashes every other phone in every benchmark. Apple give you 4 gigabytes of RAM, but it doesn't matter how much RAM a phone has, it matters how it performs. 4 gigabytes of RAM is plenty for iOS. Just because the Huawei gives you more RAM, either 6 or 8 gigabytes, doesn't mean it's better. Android needs more RAM to operate. Having said that, both manufacturers make the phone so that you can use it. It doesn't really matter how much RAM it has, it's how it performs. Both phones will perform extremely well. They're both flagships and they're not going to let you down. The Kirin 980 is a fantastic chip. It does really well in certain areas. For example, photos are super sharp, but it gets let down in other areas. The fact is that Apple's A12 chip is just simply the best smartphone chip you can buy. You get an under-screen fingerprint sensor on the Mate 20 Pro. This gives you more options unlocking your phone. You don't get that on the iPhone, you're stuck with Face ID. Face ID is better than it was, but it's still annoyingly slow and sluggish compared to those fingerprint sensors. The Mate 20 Pro has an under-screen fingerprint sensor. That in itself isn't as quick as the more old school ones, but it gives you another option to unlock your phone. The Mate 20 Pro also has its version of Face ID, although that has been shown in a lot of tests to just be not very secure whatsoever. At least Face ID on the iPhone is very secure when you use it. Also, the animation when you unlock the phone on the iPhone is really slow and just annoyingly slow, whereas on the Huawei, the animation when you unlock the screen and it goes into the app screen is much quicker. Unlocking your phone is something you do pretty much more than anything else, locking it and unlocking it, and it's just so annoyingly slow on iOS, whereas the Huawei I just feel is a little bit better in that regard. These two phones are literally head to head. $1,000 for the iPhone 10. In America, you have to go on Amazon. You can get the Mate 20 Pro for about 900 odd bucks. Look, if you like Android, then you're going to go with the Huawei. If you like iOS, then you're going to go with the iPhone. The hardware, the software, it all comes together and produces two amazing phones that can't really be separated in many different areas. I really love that wide angle on the Huawei. I really love the video on the iPhone. In China, you could buy a Huawei Mate 20 Pro and a new Huawei Nova 4 phone, two phones, for the same price as an iPhone XS. So maybe that's why iPhone is having some trouble here in China. Really, they both have some bits that are better than the other, some bits that are worse than the other. It's difficult to choose. I think it comes down to, do you want Android or do you want to stay in the Apple ecosystem?